Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, where is the best place to learn about Canadian finance. As we head into winter and phase 3 and 4 of COVID, a lot of people are gearing up and looking to purchase a new property. You're probably wondering what makes a difference between a good purchase and a not so good purchase. So in this video, I'll be sharing with you the 10 keys I look at every time I purchase a property, and I'll be walking you through two real scenarios. One where I determined at the end it wasn't a good purchase, and the other where it was a good purchase, I bought it and it turned out amazingly. I'll also show you the results at the end. So if you want to be smarter with your property purchases, keep watching this video. Alright, so let's start with the top 10 macro keys I look at when I consider properties. These are neighborhood, property tax, schools, crime rate, jobs, transportation, amenities, future development, vacancy rate, and finally, rent. So if you look at all these 10 keys, they all point to one thing, which is ability to resell this property. And this is something that my parents taught me very well as I was growing up. They are extremely experienced in the real estate space, and they always say this: before you consider buying something, first think about selling it. What is your exit strategy and exit plan? And what's the ease of getting rid of this property if you really have to do it? Because unless right now you're committing to buy a forever home that you're staying in there for the rest of your life no matter what, chances are life will happen, and sooner or later you would want to get rid of this unit and potentially buy another one that's more suitable for you, whether it's upgrading or downsizing. So with that in mind, for myself at least, number one thing I always keep in mind is the speed of sale if I really have to sell something. Real estate is extremely illiquid. You don't want to be stuck with such an expensive asset or liability, depending how you look at it, and unable to get rid of it when you have to. This is why I also consider the rental space, even though I'm buying it for self-use at the time, just in case I have to turn it into a rental while I'm looking for a new property. Alright, so just talking about theory is not good enough. Let's jump into two real scenarios I researched into 4 years ago when I was picking my first property. Now keep in mind, all the researches and numbers I show you is back in 2016. These are all the info I had back then. So before I show you the real case scenario, there are two things I want to remind you. Number one, click the like button because it really helps me to tell YouTube that these kind of videos are preferred by you guys. And number two, make sure you join my private group, Get Smarter with Money. This is where I share everyday news and tips. So if you want to get more, click the link to get the invite below. The first property I looked into, it's amazing Brentwood. Back then, 2016, this was actually one of the hardest projects. You probably see news where people were lining up sleeping outside just so they can get into the sales center for a chance to buy this property. This also got me interested, but before I went ahead, I decided to apply the 10 keys and research on this property. So number one, let's look at neighborhood. So as we see on the map, there's a healthy mix of commercial/housing buildings. There are Staples, TD, HSBC, GMC Car Center, and also a whole new Brentwood mall being constructed right behind them. Now across Brentwood, there are 14 different apartments at the time with 600 individual housing right behind. So population wise, according to the census in 2016, mostly we can see there are young, smaller families. Their occupations are either in finance or services. The income is roughly $70,000, which is above average in Canada at the time. So people living in this neighborhood tend to be professional, above average income, young families. And that also points to more suitable for the type I'm looking at, which is a one-bedroom apartment. They could easily afford my one-bedroom or rent it if I decided I have to rent it at that time. So second, let's look at property tax. This is also important because if I were to turn it into a rental in the future, it could potentially affect my rental income. Looking at Burnaby's property tax rate, it's comparable to its neighboring cities. So it's kind of in the middle, not too high, not too low, acceptable. Next, let's look at schools. If your property is convenient to go to school, then it could bring extra demand to this area, making resellability a lot higher and a lot faster. So as we can see, there's actually a very nice amount of elementary, high school, and university within reach. Driving distance is also very doable no matter which stage you're in. So this area is great for family with children. Next, let's look at crime rate. If crime rate is pretty high, there are higher chance for property damage or vehicle damage. This is not as big of a problem for condo compared to housing, but nevertheless, this is something I also want to consider because reputation of a place in terms of crime can also affect your sale price and sale speed. So there has been 113 crimes within 1 km of Amazing Brentwood. Now most of these crimes are commercial break-ins because there are a lot of commercial space around. So it's not too bad for residential wise. Crime reputation for this area back in 2016 is also above average. Next, let's look at jobs. Jobs is extremely important because if there is a lot of jobs around your area, that naturally is going to bring a lot of demand of either buyers or renter who want to stay close to work. And also, if it's convenient enough to reach other major job sources, that could pull demand from more expensive places like downtown over, so you have even higher demand. Looking at this area, we can tell it's a great job sources. Number one, there are a lot of headquarters within driving distance. Number two, Amazing Brentwood itself is building this humongous mall behind it, which is set to house anywhere from 2,500 to 5,000 new jobs. Also, Brentwood is actually the middle of all major job sources such as downtown and Richmond. It's 5 minutes walking distance from Brentwood stations. However, one thing I noticed in 2016 was Richmond actually have very similar and convenient location just like this one, but with much lower property price. So in terms of this area, the competitiveness may not be as big as expected. Now next, let's look at transportation. As we said already, this is 5 minutes away from major bus loop and Brentwood station, extremely accessible and convenient, and have lots of routes that cover most destinations. So this part is very good. So next, let's look at amenities. For my personal preference, what I usually like is having amenities around the building, but not within the apartment. Because that way I can keep my management fee low while I still have access to amenities if I want to. As we can see, Amazing Brentwood have a lot of amenities around it. There are Staples, Save on Food in the next block. Whole Food is right across. 5-minute driving distance to public pool and 15 minutes to soccer or tennis fields. However, there is also a lot of amenities within Amazing Brentwood itself, and that's why management fee looks extremely high at the time at 50 cents per square foot. So while it's convenient, the high management fee is really turning me off for this part. Now the third last thing I look at is future development. This tells me two things. One is the future demand in this area. If there are a lot of things getting built, a lot of headquarters being built, this will bring up the land value. But also number two is, are there other housing and apartments being built around me? Because if so, it's going to make things a lot more competitive, and I might have difficulty selling it or renting it at a good price. Looking at future development, we can see a new auto mall being built and also a whole new Brentwood mall as well. So that's great in terms of future jobs. It's guaranteed there will be a lot of jobs flowing into Amazing Brentwood or around it. However, we can see at the time that Solo District is being built across, which has 3 to 4 different buildings. Plus, there are other smaller projects being built around Amazing Brentwood. Plus, there are 11 residential towers that will be built inside Amazing Brentwood itself. We're looking at almost 30 buildings existing or being built, packed inside this small area. So I see it to be extremely crowded, and road is going to be a nightmare. And actually, after moving a couple of times, we're back to across Amazing Brentwood for the time being. I can tell you for a fact that right now, the road condition has been a lot worse than 4 years ago, and there's a lot of traffic jams and people going in and out of this area. So on this point, our initial thought of future development is going to be way too crowded proved to be correct 4 years later. Second last thing is vacancy rate. That's just in case I want to rent it out. I want to see how easy it is to rent it out. Permanent B has a pretty low vacancy rate as we can see, so nothing to be worried about on this point. And the last thing to look at is rent. This is to tell me my profitability and cash flow scenario if I were to rent it out. So this is the average rent for 2016 across Vancouver. Now we can assume Burnaby is going to be on the higher side. However, even looking at the higher side, it's still going to be pretty tough to make it break even or positive cash flow. Plus, the first 300 units in Tower 1 is going to be rental units. there's going to be a lot of competition on the already tight cash flow calculation. So this part I'm really iffy about, and I don't think it's a great rental property if I choose to rent it out in the future. So looking at all the keys, I rated Amazing Brentwood as a 7 out of 10 for self-use, but a 5 out of 10 for investment use. And at the time, I was considering relationship side of things as well, and that could mean I have to move to a bigger unit if I do get married and my wife move in with me. So I might need to sell this or rent it out at the time. And because the rental score, in my opinion, was too low for me, I decided to not go for this property. Instead, I went for the next property, which is Prime on Plaza, located in Surrey. This was another pre-sale unit that caught my attention at the time because of the more affordable pricing, and also it was close to SFU Surrey campus. Now I'm going to speed this up by telling you all the things I like about it and then all the things I don't like about it. So number one, what I like about this is Neighbourhood. Now in terms of demographics, it's very comparable to Amazing Brentwood at the time, except for the income. It is significantly lower, but what caught my attention was the population growth. At the time, I found that Surrey is at 11% growth compared to Vancouver average, which is 7%. So Surrey is obviously growing faster than average already. On top of that, Surrey Central, which is where Prime was located, was even higher. It was growing at 18% compared to Surrey's 11%. So while more people are pouring into Surrey, even more people are choosing Surrey Central as a main location to develop into. Next, what I like is school. Obviously, it's right next to SFU Surrey campus and Quadland campus. So in terms of access to university, it's extremely convenient. This could prove to be very attractive for student renters or buyers if I need to resell. Third thing I like are jobs. Loving the job situation here. Surrey Central itself is a giant mall with lots of office buildings or commercial units. It's also housing SFU campus, so everybody working at SFU Surrey will be working right next to my building. It also has a city hall across. Also, like Brentwood, it's very close to the main bus loop and SkyTrain, ease of access. Fourth, transportation, like I said, bus loop plus train, and also at the time a light rail was being built. Now back then I wasn't sure how convenient or needed a light rail system is. It turns out now they're not even building it, but at the time it sounded good, so that was a big plus for me. Point number 5 I like is future development. I couldn't really find the articles I was reading back then, but basically they were saying that they were looking to build Surrey into the next metro town. From 2006 to 2016, 13.7 billion have been invested to add new constructions, and over 19 million square feet of commercial industrial space are being added into this area already. It also has the second lowest municipal tax. What that means is it's going to attract a lot more business to come here and open shop. Also, looking at development around Prime at the time, most spaces were taken up already and have no plan to redevelop into condo space. So that's significantly lower any future potential competitions. Second last thing I like is vacancy rate. Turns out at the time, vacancy for Surrey is even lower than Burnaby at only 0.4%. And the last thing is rent. At the time when I was considering this, people were quoting me a 1-bedroom rental of around $1,000 to $1,200. Now, due to a much lower price point for this project, there is much higher chance for me to cover my cash flow, and I might even be net positive. This is a point that is extremely attractive to me, just in case I have to rent this unit out. However, there are 3 things I don't like around this area. Number 1 is property tax. Surrey's property tax is actually much higher compared to other cities, so this could hurt my bottom line if I turn it into a rental, or if I'm living in there, this could prove to be more expensive cost per year. Number 2 is crime rate. Even though in Surrey Central, crime rate has been dropping every single year, with 2016 the lowest it has been, there's still a lot of news of shooting happening around Surrey at the time. So reputation in people's mind is not very good, and that could hurt demand if people really don't like Surrey's reputation. Last thing is amenities. Even though it's quite convenient around Prime at the time, the maintenance fee is still above average at 41 cents per square foot. So all in all, if I wrap everything together, I rated Prime to be 6 out of 10 for self-use and 7 out of 10 for rental. And because the score is much closer, I ended up buying a 1-bedroom apartment at a high floor. So just to tell you at the end what happened, by the time this was completing, I got married already, and this unit was way too small for us to live inside. And because of specific rules from CRA, we can't sell it right away or it would trigger business tax. We would have to rent it out as a rental property at least for 1 or 2 years before we consider reselling this. And once we rent this out, we realized all the research we did on this property paid off. Not only were we able to create a net positive cash flow from this rental property every month, comparing the cash flow versus what we actually put in out of our pocket for this property, it proved to be about a 21% return on the cash flow net of expense before tax. This is an extremely high return, not even considering the appreciation of the unit itself. But this is a separate topic I'll make in another time, talking about how we calculated this return and also all the micro things we did to further improve the unit. But at the end of the day, the research did help us to make a better choice looking back. We also learned a lot in how to consider in a property, even though you aim for self-use, but things could change while you're trying to get there. So how to accommodate for all situations necessary. So this is what I want to share with you guys today. However, I want to make it clear that you don't have to look at all 10 things that I just listed for your own property. Some people really care about one thing like maybe neighborhood over another like property tax. And also, if you're very determined to be a self-use, a lot of things you might not have to look at. So at the end of the day, decide for yourself if you want to use the 10 keys, and if so, do you want to use all 10 keys? Alright, if you have another system that you use to filter out what property you buy, make sure you leave me a comment below because I want to learn from you. And if you want more of these videos, I do upload them every Tuesday 8:30 EST. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe to the channel and click the bell button so you get all the notification in the future. Alright, this is Jacky. I hope you found this interesting. I will see you next time. Bye!